let's get started. Well, it is 10:05 a.m. here in New York City, bright and sunny with a nice weather. Perfect time to talk about future opportunities in our doctoral program in Columbia Biomedical Engineering Department. Today we have a list of speakers here. Joining me is Professor Henry Hess, Chair of our Graduate Studies. And then we have Ms. Kristen Henlon, our Assistant Director of Career Placement. Myself, my name is Helen Sen. I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Student Affairs. And then we also have Ms. Megan Jameson, who's the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions. And we have two current PhD students with us today, Thomas Bina and Naveed Tabako. And so without further ado, Professor Hess, I will start the agenda and hand the mic over to you.
Thank you, Helen. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to this session. And we're going to go over quickly over the department, our career resources, the requirements, give you some information on graduate student life, the student organizations, and then go into the details of the admissions requirements and the admissions process. Next slide, please. But first, let's start with a movie introducing the department.
Biomedical engineering at Columbia University is highly interdisciplinary and encompasses research expertise across the whole university. Our department also emphasizes solving real-life complex biological and medical problems. In other words, engineering for healthy humanity.
A biomedical engineer typically has a plethora of skills that span life sciences and biology, traditional engineering. Our people have to have an appreciation for socioeconomical concerns, right? Especially, say, our teams that are working in low resource settings, but all of our groups have to be cognizant of the entrepreneurial aspects. So a BME is a hybrid engineer.
Columbia University is fortunate to have a top medical school, so it's an incredibly rich and diverse opportunity to cross-pollinate engineering principles with the needs of medicine.
We are in a lab for stem cells and tissue engineering. We are now capable to repair organs and parts of the human body. We are becoming much more sophisticated now with our designs of the biological systems. So you can make a whole set of very small size organs and tissues from an individual on a chip. And you can do testing in a patient-specific way. So when we talk today about precision medicine, this is one of the most effective directions in which this area is going.
I'm part of the Zuckerman Institute at Columbia. It's the Mind-Brain Behavior Institute, and we're really trying to understand the brain from every possible angle. In my lab, we develop new microscopes and new ways to image the brain and other living tissues. Imaging in particular, biomedical imaging, really spans a huge range of disciplines. And quite uniquely, I think, we extend our techniques quite often into the studies of disease. So we're studying stroke, we're studying brain development, we're studying Alzheimer's. Neuroscience is continually changing and requires this really rapid adoption and leveraging of new tools.
The work that we do is really about trying to work on the cancer problem, and that fits into Columbia Engineering for Humanity. What we do in the lab is try to program bacteria by engineering their DNA, and then we will actually put them together with cancer cells and visualize them under the microscope to see how their interactions behave. And so we are very interested in the process of visualization itself, whether it's through the microscope or by staining them in different colors. The visualizations can specifically help inspire new ways to try and detect and treat cancer.
All this work is really very heavily based on effective collaboration of people from many different areas, because our approach to biology, to tissue engineering, to building new technologies is very holistic.
Our faculty are very much engaged with the students. We We depend upon the students. They're the lifeblood of our laboratories, for example. It allows them to have an impact and actually to affect humanity, to affect patients, to save lives.
I've seen our students go on to incredibly diverse careers, from medicine to being patent lawyers, to being investors, to working for Doctors Without Borders. And I characterize them as being people who are ready for a challenge, who are ready to say, well, I don't know much about heart valves, but give me a couple of days and I'll read up on it.
Yeah, so that highlighted a few of the labs in our department. There are many different research areas you can study, including bioinformatics, machine learning, more traditional fields like biomechanics, imaging, robotics, etc., etc. We have over 20 core faculty and more than 20 affiliate and joint faculty, often in the medical school, who cover pretty much every subject in biomedical engineering. Next slide, please. So we're highly ranked among the biomedical engineering departments in the top 10. The faculty are very well funded from primarily NIH, but also other agencies like NSF and the Department of Defense and various philanthropic funders. The faculty are very accomplished. They get many awards. Several of them are members in the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, or Medicine. There are many startups which are being generated from the research activities which succeed and then create the intellectual foundation and the intellectual property which support startups. And yeah, we have also continuously young faculty joining the department who then take their first steps and are, for example, recognized by the NSF Career Awards. Next slide, please. The doctoral program has grown tremendously. We have over 160 doctoral students, and a significant number of them are recognized with various fellowships. But as you can tell, it's nice to have a fellowship, but it's not necessary. And it's a very interactive family. You will hear more about that from Naveed in a moment. Next slide, please. So as a department, we also have embraced diversity, equity, inclusion. We have a very active DEI committee, and we're trying to welcome everybody to this department, make everybody feel comfortable. And if you want to engage in supporting these activities, you're always welcome to join the DEI committee and get engaged in various outreach initiatives and in advancing these DEI goals listed here. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kristen Hanlon, who is our Assistant Director of Career Placement. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As Dr. has mentioned, my name is Kristen Hanlon. I am the Assistant Director of Career Placement for the BME department. I'm just going to walk you through what I do and talk a bit about the career resources I provide. Next slide. So given all the different types of fields you can go in as a PhD student from the BME department, I have varied the type of resources that I provide. Firstly, I help a lot with resume and CV feedback. I also help with cover letter assistance, as well as mock interviews, behavioral interviews. And then I help with general job seeking support. So that could be through information sessions. I have created panels with alumni, different employer showcases, different alumni chats, just so that students can get an understanding of where our alumni go, and that so that they can network with them while they're in the program. We also have a personalized job board that is on our courseworks page. Through this job board, I share opportunities just to our BME students. They're organized by region. So I have things in the Northwest, the Northeast, the West, the Midwest, and the South, as well as international opportunities. And I also will share events, career fairs, career expos, and panels on this page too. So this page is just, as I said, for BME students, but there are also there's also another resource that's for the engineering graduate students at large. Next slide, please. And so I just wanted to kind of walk you through a brief snapshot of some of the sample job titles we've seen over the years and what students end up doing. If you see this photo on the right, you might see some companies that you've heard of, as well as companies that you haven't, which I think is really cool and a great, and it really does showcase where our students go. Some students end up in startups, some students in research hospitals. We've seen a lot of students go into life science consulting, but there are students who want to start their own companies, right? So they might start their own startups and use the resources that they've developed through BME at Columbia to help them get there. So I just would take a quick scan of some of the roles and see if any of them align with your interests. Next slide, please. And so I also just want to talk a little bit about our professional development and leadership courses. So this is a resource that is available to you that's completely free, and it's available to you alongside my resources. And so at SEAS, we have a pretty comprehensive PDL is what we call it, training course for PhD students and master's level students. And essentially, these are courses that range from teaching, from presentation, from salary negotiations, to talking about wellness, diversity and inclusion, how to manage a budget. They range, many different types of topics, and they're here to just give you a bit of support along the way. There is a week-long training session in August where students can take elective classes, but students are also available to take as many courses as they want or that they can manage during the school year. I highly recommend it. I think it works really well in conjunction with the opportunities that I share and the events that I hold, because it gives you a more kind of holistic, well-rounded view of how to network, how to manage your time, how to do the job search, as well as how to just enjoy your time at Columbia. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to pass it over to Helen Sen, the Associate Director of Graduate Student Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Hi, everyone. So as part of my position, I typically work closely with students in terms of their degree progress and any questions they may have about the program. And so I'll briefly talk about the doctoral programs we have here at Columbia University. Part of our BME program is that we have two different track students can apply for. One is the MS PhD program, and one is the PhD only program. So there are two tracks that students can join us for our doctoral studies. For students who do not have an MS degree at the start of the program, you should apply for our MS PhD program. And if you do have an MS degree in place already, you are more than welcome to apply to our PhD only program. And something worthy of mentioning is that as long as you're admitted to our doctoral program, so either the MS PhD program or the PhD only program, your tuition and health insurance will be covered along with a monthly stipend. So let's talk a bit about our master's degree requirement first, since for students entering our MS PhD program, they are required to complete the same master's degree requirements as our PhD students. I mean, as our master's only students. Sorry about that. And for our master's degree requirement, students are required to complete 30 credits of coursework. So that's approximately 10 classes here at Columbia University. The required courses include BME and 6003 computational modeling of physiological systems, one graduate level course in the applied math department, and graduate level courses are typically numbered 4,000 level or above. And also 4 BME graduate level classes. So these are 4,000 level or higher classes offered by the department itself. And then you will have to take 2 semesters of BME 9700 graduate seminar in BME. And these 2 semesters of the seminar class is a 0 credit class, but you are required to submit assignments and graded pass-fail for it. And then in terms of the remainder requirements, they are technical electives, and the content should be related to your BME field of study that you're doing research with. 3 of it has to come from the engineering school in general. So part of the civil engineering department, chemical engineering, also earth and environmental engineering, mechanical engineering. We have an IOR department and a computer science department, 9 departments total. And then you have 1 remainder class that you can take outside of the engineering school if you want. We sometimes have students take courses at the neurology department, the School of Public Health, or sometimes with the business school as well. But students typically work really closely with their faculty advisor in determining what classes they take for their studies. Most students choose classes that really will correlate with their research in the lab and the field that they are doing research in. And so once you complete the MS degree requirements for MS PhD students, you will then enter the PhD side of studies. And this also this requirement also applies to our PhD only students. The curriculum requirement for the PhD studies is 30 credits beyond your master's degree. And so after completing your master's degree, either here at Columbia or at another institution, depending on whether or not you're joining us via the MS PhD program or the PhD only program, you are required to complete 30 credits beyond your master's studies. For these 30 credits, you have 9 credit of required instructional courseworks. So that includes 2 graduate level math courses, one of which has to be from the applied math department at the graduate level, so 4,000 level or higher. The remainder 1 graduate level math course requirement can be a biostatistics or statistics class, but if you want, it can also be from the applied math department. And then you're required to complete the BME 6003 computational modeling and physiological system class. Now, some students may ask, like, if I entered via the MS PhD track, I did my master's with Columbia, and these requirements, these 9 credits of required instructional course requirements listed here, you've completed it already. Are you exempted from it, right? No, you're not exempted from having 9 credits of instructional coursework, but if you have completed 2 graduate level math courses and or the BME and 6003 computational modeling of physiological system course already during your master studies with us, you may substitute them with a technical elective. And that is in communication with your faculty advisor to choose what is a more appropriate class for you to take at the time. And it really should be supplementing and bridging knowledge gaps for your PhD research. Now, the remainder 21 credits of study, you will consult with your faculty advisor as well. If your faculty advisor approves, up to 6 credits can be research credits. And one thing that I want to mention is that if you enter our PhD only track, you are required to do the 2 semesters of BME 9700 BME seminar class as well for 2 semesters. In addition, all doctoral students, when they enter the PhD portion of their study, you are required to complete 6 residence unit. 2 residence unit would be applied to your account if you have a master's degree in place. So that's really 1 resident unit per semester. So that's 4 residence unit and that you have to self-register for over 4 semesters of studies. Beyond that, you'll register for extended residence unit. These residence units are really there to keep you on a full-time student status, which is required by the School of Engineering for all PhD students. And then you will have to complete 2 instructional requirement, which is typically TAing a class. So students typically TA for 2 semesters between their first and third year of studies with us and have that requirement completed. Students in their second year of studies are also required to complete the qualifying exam. That is an exam that has 2 components. One is the paper component and one is an oral presentation component. And so after passing the qualifying exam, you'll be officially on track to be a doctoral candidate at that point. And so here is an example of an overview of how your study with us will look like over the course of your doctoral studies with us. In year 1, regardless of your MS PhD students entering or PhD only student entering, year 1 typically consists of coursework. And if you're not in class, you're typically expected to be in the lab doing research. And then year 2, you'll continue finishing off your curriculum requirement and also continue doing your research in the lab. But this is the year that you will be preparing and taking the qualifying exam. And if you are in the MS PhD program, year 2, in the fall semester, you will be completing your MS degree requirements, and your MS degree would be conferred in the following semester in spring. And then in year 3, students typically aim to complete their TAing requirements, but sometimes students wait until year 4, and that's fine. But most students do complete their TAing requirements in their 3rd year of studies. We do require all of our doctoral students to do their thesis proposal, or you may call it dissertational proposal defense. And then after that, some students may be on a faster track and some students' research may be a little bit more extensive. You will collaborate with your faculty advisor in terms of when you will do your thesis defense. Students typically are able to do their thesis defense in year 5, but we do have on average a good number of students that do it in year 6 as well. The maximum number of years that you have to complete your doctoral degree requirement is 7 years, but most of our students complete it in 5 to 6 years of range. And so that concludes the overview of our doctoral degree requirements. Now I will hand it over to our PhD candidate, Thomas Mina, who is in Professor Helen Liu's lab. Thomas, it's all yours.
Yeah, hey everyone. Yeah, so it's kind of weird for me to call how many years I've been in. So I started in the spring semester because of COVID complications, all this. but I guess I'm in my second, going into my third year of PhD. So I was in the MS PhD portion, so came in straight from undergrad. Did my undergrad in material science and now in biomedical engineering with Dr. Helen Liu. So I'll just talk a little bit about, sort of what it's like being a graduate student at Columbia, and how that sort of fits into, the research and life in New York in general. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'll just start here with sort of the coursework. When you're coming into the program, that is the first thing that you're dealing with. Especially for those first couple semesters, you're a little heavier on coursework than in terms of research. But really, all the courses I've taken here have honestly been pretty great. It's a good way because all of the faculty that I've taken courses with are really love the experience being able to, mentor students. So it's a great time to, get to know the other faculty in the department, as well as get to know classmates and TAs. The TAs are usually, slightly older graduate student, third or fourth years. So it's also a good time to, make those connections, or if you have, and they're good people to go back to if you have questions when you're, preparing for your qualifying exam or things like that. So you definitely get to know TAs, other classmates, in office hours. Yeah, and we're always having, like group chats of in class, so we can work together on problem sets, these kind of things. And luckily for, upcoming students, I think things are finally all the way back in person. So that's really pretty exciting at least it was for me, moving away from sitting at the computer doing classes to, it's just a different energy, having everyone there in person. Next slide. So in terms of my research, so I'm in Dr. Helen Liu's lab. So we're really interested in biomaterials, specifically for generation of tissue and interfaces. So we are the biomaterials and interface tissue engineering laboratory at Columbia. So interfacial tissues like tendons, ligaments, these kind of things. But we're also branching out into a lot of different projects. So cool thing about Columbia is that, you're accepted straight into a lab from the get-go. So, you're, starting up on a project basically from day one. And then in our lab are working, sort of on the material side as well on the cellular side. But, we also have projects in, some synthetic biology, some machine learning. So there's a lot of variability in what your interest. If you have various interests, it's available because we're also collaborating with a lot of labs. I'll say that is something that I've been pretty impressed with in our department in general. It's very collaborative. People are, happy to help. So we have collaborations with a number of other labs, and we're just over the course of the year developing all these skills related to research, scientific questioning and the scientific method and all that. Next slide. Yeah, and then work-life balance. So we have a number of student groups. So I'll point out this first one, Go BME, so the Graduate Organization of Biomedical Engineers. So this is our sort of organization of the department composed of graduate students. So I'm part of it. Naveed will speak a little bit more about it. He was a former president. But yeah, so it's just an organization where we try to put on fun events and sort of academic events for students in the department. So we'll do picnics. We organize a lot of intramural sports. And of course, it's a huge benefit of living in New York City is that we have like the whole island of Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, and then, like New Jersey to, go out and explore. So there's always things to do if you have a few hours outside of the lab. And then next slide. And then another, I'm sure we're all familiar. It's like living in New York. It can be quite difficult to get good housing, but Columbia Residential. So I don't want to speak about the specifics in case I get anything wrong, but I live in the Columbia offered housing, and I think it's really quite nice, especially for the cost, considering we're living in New York. So I live just a few blocks away from lab, so it takes me about 10 minutes to walk in every day, which for me is perfect. It's like just far enough to, have a nice walk in, but not close enough that I'm like going back and forth all the time. And I think the space is really great for, especially if you're working in the lab, living around the Columbia campus. And the next slide. Yeah, and so these are just, some of our favorite spots around Columbia. I won't go through all of it, but I'll just point out, we're sort of centrally located around 3 parks, Riverside Park, Morningside Park, and then still pretty close to the sort of northern part of Central Park. I'll definitely say Riverside, so the Hudson Greenway goes all the way down to Battery Park down at the south of Manhattan. So if you're, a biker, that's definitely a really great sort of bike trail. There's also a rock climbing gym really close to Columbia. I know a lot of students in the department are very into rock climbing. So you definitely find a community there if that's something you're interested in. But there's many little places around campus, and then of course in the greater New York area that are super fun to go out and explore. So you're never really lacking in things to do. Right. On the next slide. Yeah, so I'll just pass it off to Naveed, another student, PhD student.
Hello, I'm Naveed. I'm a 5th year PhD candidate in the lab of Dr. Gordana Vunyak-Novakovic at Columbia. And my thesis work is generally focused on organs on a chip and using engineered models of human tissues to study injury or disease in different contexts. But today I'll be talking about some of our student groups. Next slide. So the group that our department, that's kind of our graduate group of the department, is called BME, the Graduate Organization of Biomedical Engineers. And so this is a student-run organization for graduate students, both master's and PhD students. It's a majority PhD just because we're here for a little bit longer. But we host a variety of different events, academic events, social events, philanthropic events. Every year we do preparation events for qualifying exam, for different fellowship applications. So the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, we encourage students to apply, and we help people apply by providing feedback for their applications. Also NIH grants and stuff like that. For social events, we do a lot of happy hours, weekend brunches, ice skating, informal and more formal events as well. And people really get to know each other. And then philanthropically, we've been doing a variety of different events, but Girl Science Day is one we actively participate in every year, really focused on bringing middle and high schoolers from around the area to campus with a variety of other groups at Columbia and help organize specific BME-oriented events. So some labs have demos that help introduce different topics, like for us, tissue engineering, to some of these younger students from around the city. Next slide. Yeah, so like I mentioned, we have a variety of social events. The department hosts a number of these social events as well, and so we either help participate in them, or we have our own events as well. We have a Thanksgiving event every year, and so this was, I think, on pause for most of COVID, but then this year we're bringing it back. We'll do it in, I think, 2 weeks from now, to celebrate kind of the closing of the semester. And then the department itself has its own holiday party, which is pretty fun. Next slide. Intramurals. So we also organize a number of intramural sports between different students in the department. So we'll have a few each semester that are what people are really interested in playing. So we have a few teams that play the intramural sports and then compete with other graduate students around the university. So it's a good way to meet people and a good way to also stay a little bit active. Next slide. In addition to the events that we host, we also either co-sponsor or just help promote events of the graduate engineering student council. So this is like not just BME, but really across the engineering school. So they host a lot of events. Like once you get onto campus, you'll realize that they host basically like 2 or 3 events a week. And they have a lot of funding, a lot of different resources, but really for academic events, for social events, like any type of event, they'll probably host something like that. And they have a few like larger social events like boat tours around the city, or like they have like a social event in one of our large engineering spaces. I think once a month they have this event. And so it's a really good way to meet people from other engineering departments. And when you first come to campus during like the first few weeks of being a PhD student or a graduate student, you really get to meet a lot of people through EGSC sponsored events. And they also have some resources as well. If you're interested in like going to a conference, they have these scholarships that help promote, basically fund your trip or going to some professional development opportunity. Most labs also support you in that respect, but it's nice to have like an engineering school sponsored scholarship as well. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Jamison. I am the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions here at Columbia Engineering, and I'm going to very briefly go over our admissions deadlines, requirements, and then a little bit on funding for you today. So as we move into the next slide, you will see our deadlines for admission. So for students who are applying to either an MS-PhD track program or the PhD program, your priority deadline is going to be on December 15th. It's very important to pay close attention to these deadlines because we do admission on a rolling basis. We release decisions on a rolling basis. So you really want to try to aim to submit that application as close to the priority deadline as you possibly can. As we move into the next slide, you'll see all of our application requirements. These are pretty standard, but we will first ask you to submit an online application form. You can find the link to this on our admissions website. We'll also ask you for transcripts from every university that you have attended previously, as well as 3 letters of recommendation. We'll also ask you for a resume as well as a personal statement. And then you will see video interview listed here. That is largely for MS applicants though. Now, concerning test scores, the GRE is not a requirement for 2023. This is going to be optional for you. I will say that, but I'll also say that if you've taken the GRE already and you're very happy with the score that you got, you feel like it's a strong representation of your skills and abilities as a student, then by all means do submit those. But if you don't feel that way, or if you're not sure how you feel about it, there's no need to submit them. It should not negatively impact your application to not submit those scores. And then we also do, for students who received their previous degree or undergraduate degree in a country where English is not the first and widely spoken language, we will require English proficiency scores. We're pretty flexible about which ones we'll accept. We take TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, PTE. So we're, again, very flexible, but we will need one of those for those students that applies to. On the next slide, you will also see funding information. So as you may know, all of our PhD students are fully funded through teaching or research assistantships. This also includes MS-PhD track students. And those assistantships will cover all of the expenses that we have listed here. So it will include a stipend, tuition, health insurance, and facilities fees. If you have additional questions about this, you can visit the link that we have here at the bottom, or we can answer some questions you may have in the Q&A as well. On the next slide, you'll see all of our contact information. So if you have any questions about your application or our application requirements or the process in general, please reach out. We would love to chat with you about any questions that you may have. And we hope to see you on campus soon.
Thank you so much, Megan. So I will talk a little bit more in detail about the specific admission process for our department's doctoral programs. And for our doctoral program, our admission is match-based. So what that means is that it's really driven by the opportunities individual faculty members have available, and also in terms of your own research interest, whether that is a match with the faculty's research interest as well. So students who are admitted to our doctoral program typically are admitted directly to a lab. So on day one, you will start doing research work with the research faculty that you are interested and have matched with. And so in terms of our process overview, similarly to what Megan has mentioned, there is a priority deadline on December 15th for fall admission into the program. And so after December 15, our faculty would start reviewing applications and then also and continuing to select candidates to invite for our interviews. Sometimes faculty will conduct a first round of interviews with you over the phone or through Zoom nowadays, since we are all very familiar with Zoom now. And there will be a set of candidates who are invited to our interview days in late February. For this admission cycle for fall 2023 admission, we have the interview days set for February 23rd to 24th. If you are invited to attend our interview days, you will receive an email invitation. And so if you are not invited for our interview days, that's not the end of the admission application cycle. It's something that faculty may reach out to additional candidates to interview for their lab as well. In March, our first round of admission decisions typically go out, and we have a response date in early April. And then once we receive the applicant's decision whether or not to attend our PhD program, sometimes faculty may also go back into the application pool and look for additional candidates to interview for and offer admissions. But most of the offers do go out by May each year for our fall admits. And so in terms of our faculty contacts, so over here in the previous slide, I actually forgot to mention that you can actually take a look at our joint affiliate or core faculty member from our main website, bme.columbia.edu. Under the main homepage of our department, you'll see a Meet Our Faculty hyperlink over here. So you will have the opportunity to take a look at a snapshot of the faculty's research, their interest, and who is faculty in the department, and have an opportunity to actually reach out to them if you want to, but it's not required for admissions. Typically, faculty do look over all the applications that are submitted and expressed interest to do research with them. And so that would be an overview of our own department's admission process for reviewing doctoral candidate applications. And please do connect with us on social media. We are very active on social media channels. That is a great way to follow some exciting events or department developments that we have, and then you can also learn more about our own department. So that concludes our presentation today, and we will go ahead and move on to our Q&A session. So for our Q&A session, we'll be diving into the Q&A toolbox where you have previously submitted questions to us. If we do feel a question is better answered live for all of our attendees today, we will answer that question live instead. And so without that, let's stop our screen share. And I would ask our panelists to put on their video stream at this moment, and so that we can talk and chat with our attendees today. Thank you. So I do have a first question in line. We have someone asking, are applicants required to have an engineering undergrad degree in order to apply for our doctoral program? Who wants to take a stab at this?
So they do not. It certainly helps, but you can have a degree in biochemistry, biology. If your future advisor and the graduate committee feels that you have the right background for the research they want you to do, any undergraduate degree is acceptable. However, you will have to be comfortable enough with math to pass the required math courses, and you will have to be willing to become an engineer and work on acquiring the knowledge you may not have gotten as an undergrad.
Thank you, Professor Hess. Thank you. So we did have some questions related to the residence unit portion that I've briefly spoke about during the degree requirement part. To clarify, first I want to say that all of our doctoral candidates, MS PhD or PhD only, are required to maintain full-time status. And so if you are entering the program as an MS PhD student, during the MS portion of your program of studies, to maintain full-time status, you register for a minimum of 12 credits of studies and coursework in order to do so. Once you enter the PhD portion of your studies, and this applies to our PhD only students as well, you register for residence unit. It's a course that maintains your full-time status. It is not an instructional course. It's a course that is for student status primarily. And so if you register for that course, you're automatically considered as a full-time student, even though you're not registered in any credit-based courses. I hope that helps clarify things a little bit. And then we have a next question asking, does a student need to find a supervisor or faculty advisor before they apply to the doctoral program? Anyone want to take a stab on this?
So maybe I can take that again. You do not, during the application, we will, when you submit your application, you will be able to check boxes which indicate the faculty you are interested in. And so I encourage you to go through the list of faculty, see which ones you're interested in, and then indicate your interest in these faculty during your submission. And that will tell them that they should more closely look at your application. Now, the faculty, for example, I do not only look at the applications of the students who checked an interest. For me, I skim or look over, well, and look into the other applications as well, but that raises a flag checking the box raises a flag that you're interested in them, and the faculty will probably look more closely at your thing. There's also the opportunity in the personal statement to indicate your preferences. But you do not have to have the advisor identified. The match will emerge during the recruitment process. Would you like? Yeah, that would be my answer. Helen, do you have something else?
No, that's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you, Professor Hess. So I have a question regarding to labs that focus on tissue engineering. So I would say refer to our meet our faculty hyperlink on our website, bme.columbia.edu. That PDF really has a comprehensive list of faculties that students that can study under with. But we do have two tissue engineering PhD students here today. Naveed and Thomas both are knee deep into tissue engineering stuff. Maybe you two can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I commented in the thing, but we have a lot of different labs focused on tissue engineering, and a lot of labs that are like affiliate tissue, like they do tissue engineering work, but they might not be like solely focused on tissue engineering. And so like Gordana Novakovic, our lab does tissue engineering. Clark Hung's lab does a lot of tissue engineering. Helen Liu, Cam Leong, and then we have a number of other faculty that do some part of tissue engineering or our affiliate faculty. So we have a lot of faculty at Columbia that do stem cell based work that interacts with, you know, if you want to do more of a stem cell focused approach towards modeling disease, it doesn't need to be just tissue engineering. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Thomas, anything to add on your end?
No, I mean, Naveed covered just about everything I was about to say. So
okay. So housing. I have a question about Columbia housing. So Columbia housing, if you do apply by the deadline set forth by the Columbia residential office, then housing is guaranteed for doctoral students for 5 years. And so with that said, it's something that you would have to apply for, and there are deadlines for it. It is not guaranteed in a way where you can just show up on campus and expect to have a key into an apartment. It's something that you do have to be responsible for in terms of applying for a housing. But I think Naveed and Thomas, you both were in Columbia residential housing, right? Previously, at least.
I still am.
Previously.
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, I lived there for like 3 years and then I moved out. I think some people, if you work on the medical campus, a lot of people move uptown. You can also move down to, like I moved outside of the Columbia bubble, which I think was really nice also for getting a different experience in the city. But the convenience of Columbia housing is great. It's like it's a fantastic amenity, I think, for the school.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree. And then, I mean, I'll say, so they're all good, but if you can try to get in early, you know, don't put it off, because there are some very nice units in Columbia housing that I've seen. So just throwing that out there.
thank you, thank you. I think this question is for Professor Hess. Professor Hess, what's your perspective on how much research experience should an applicant have?
Well, more tends to be better, but we're looking at you as a whole person. So I've had students in my group, or still have students with my group, which came with very little research experience. I had students in my group who came with a lot of research experience. there's no hard and fast rule how much you should have, and if you should have published something or something like that. It helps. It's a piece of your application, but there's no rule how much of it you should have.
Yep. It really depends on the research you're interested in and the research opportunities we have for the admission cycle. This one's for you, Kristen. What opportunities do we offer students to collaborate with industries or companies during their studies? I think you're muted, or your mic is not coming through.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, now.
That's a good question. For PhD students, opportunities are usually in the summer. So those would be summer internships. Just because you're usually going to be in your lab working with your PI, there isn't as much flexibility to collaborate with industry partners. So I would say the types of opportunities that I promote are summer internship opportunities. There are some PhD students who end up doing summer internships, whether that be in like their third or potentially fourth summer. But it really is up to your PI and what you are ultimately doing in the lab. If the summer is a time that you can take off to pursue some sort of industry project. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Kristen. So looking at the time now, we are at 11:01. So we are going to conclude our info session today. I know we have a lot of questions that we weren't able to answer during our info session. However, please do feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions throughout your application process. And we wish you the best of luck in your PhD program exploration process. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a nice day.